Howdy, howdy, and welcome to My Bloody Judy with your final forgets, myself, Zachary Patton Garcia.
And Ian Carlos Crawford. And today, our opening kill of the episode is...
Hi, Chancey K. Robinson.
Hi, Chauncey.
Yes.
Hi.
Chauncey, why don't you tell the people a little bit about what you do?
Well, I'm a film, TV, and culture critic and journalist, full-time journalist, and I love horror. That's kind of like my main focus. But usually, when I dig into the blood and guts of horror films and TV shows, I like to connect them to things happening in society and things like that. Which is one of the reasons why I love horror in particular, because I feel like it's such a great reflection of a warped mirror of society a lot of times. So.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a horror podcast, so, you know, the right place,
here.
You also have a YouTube channel, Chancey K. Robinson, correct?
Yeah, Chancey K. Robinson, Twisted CKR is usually what I go on by there. And yeah, I dig into a lot of film and TV there, mainly film and TV. I usually focus on horror, although I occasionally, because I like movies in general, I expand to other stuff too, like fantasy and comedy and stuff too.
Perfect. Well, today it's perfect. We got a horror movie for everybody. Something for everybody to enjoy. We're gonna be covering Dr. Sleep, the 2019 film written and directed by the wonderful Mike Flanagan, modern horror master. Do we all agree on that?
Yes.
Yes, okay. He did Hush, Ouija, Origin of Evil, Oculus, completely underrated, by the way, Haunting of Hill House, and Bly Manor, so he's kind of a big deal, and this is based on the, 2013 book by Stephen King. So, I got a question for both of y'all. I kind of forget what your answer was, Ian, but first, what did y'all think of The Shining? Because it's hard to mention this without The Shining, the film, the Kubrick film, and second, what did you think of this on its own and as a sequel to The Shining?
Chauncey?
Well, I could not stand Kubrick's The Shining. I have a lot of problems with his version, or what he called The Shining. I felt like he gutted basically the essence of what Stephen King actually intended with his book. And I thought that one of the great things I love about Dr. Sleep was that I felt like Flanagan kind of had this happy medium. Like he didn't throw out, the baby with the bathwater with The Shining. He took those elements because you have to, because a lot of people mostly know The Shining through Kubrick, but he also reinstated a lot of the things that were lost in Kubrick's interpretation, I thought. So.
Okay. And what about Dr. Sleep?
I love Dr. Sleep.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. I thought it was like the happy medium between what we should have gotten in The Shining and then telling this new story. So okay. I really enjoy it. It's one of my favorites of a Stephen King. I thought it was kind of underrated, because everyone was making such a big deal about it when it came out. And then I think a lot of people, for lack of a better term, they slept on Dr. Sleep. They weren't going to it, which was like, why not? Way better movie.
And what about you, Ian? What'd you think?
I disagree with nearly everything.
This is how we're going. We're starting it. Let's go.
It's a trap.
I love the Kubrick Shining. I like the book as well. And they are very different. I mean, it's kind of like the bare bones were there, but that's kind of like Kubrick filled in his. I understand why Stephen King also doesn't like it. I mean, his version wasn't good though. The TV movie was not good. But I think I like both of them separately. Like I like the movie and I like the book. I think both of them have big flaws. Like, I'm glad we don't have the fucking living shrubbery coming to life. That's stupid. But it makes me mad that in the movie, Dick comes in and just dies. And in the book, he does get beat up, but he makes it. He's cut up and, mostly almost dead. I feel like in the book, they describe his injuries as how is this man not dead? But he makes it. And I kind of I do think that this movie is a very good mixture of the two. It's a sequel to both, which I remember. So I don't like this book. I think the Dr. Sleep is a very boring book. And I remember just from the trailers, because you saw those scenes of the ghosts that were like reoccurring. And I remember being like, how the fuck are they going to do this? Because that's not it. Like, there is no hotel in the book. The hotel's blown up. And I think that the thing I do like about this movie is that they do a very good job of, I mean, Mike Flanagan and clearly whoever else helped like write the script, they all were like clearly big fans of The Shining, maybe Stephen King in general, but I thought they did a very good job. I don't think there could be a better job blending, making it a sequel to both at the same time. Like, I think that they achieved that 100%. I think that the movie has a lot of the failings of the book. Stephen King often is like jerking himself off on the page where it's like, all right, did we need 50 pages of like nothing? And I think the movie could have used a tighter edit, even though it's not that long. I think it feels very long. I saw this in theater. I was like super excited to see it. I remember leaving and being like, eh. I liked it better on this rewatch, I will say, than I did when I saw it in the theater.
Okay, that's fair. You know, it is really like you said, it's perfect at like offering something to Stephen King fans and to the Kubrick fans of The Shining. You know, it is that kind of bridge between. I have to say, when I left the theater after watching this, I was blown away. I thought it was like so good. And obviously, you're not going to see all the flaws and imperfections on your first watch through. I mean, maybe you, Ian. I don't know. You might. But no, I really, really enjoyed it. And Mike Flanagan, like, I didn't even realize that he'd done it. I didn't really look anything up going into it. I just knew
he wasn't
that,
really like a name yet.
That's exactly. Which is weird because he's been around so long, right? Like, he's done so much. I was super excited to see Wendy Torrance because I'd heard, of the actress that they were using for her and everything. And, it met all of my expectations. The only thing I couldn't, and I think about this for a lot of, book adaptations, is that I wonder if it would have been done better as like maybe 6 or 8 episodes of something rather than a movie. But I don't know. Because I mean, it worked so perfectly as a movie also. And I mean, it really was underrated. I didn't see all the hype over it. Maybe people were a little bit Stephen King'd out at that point, right? Because we'd had Dark Tower, both It movies, and Dark Tower didn't do all that well, did it? No. Yeah,
I didn't see it, but I heard it wasn't that great. But I didn't.
Yeah. See, it's not meant for a movie. That's one of his that should definitely be a series.
Yeah,
because that's like very thick.
Yeah.
It's like a bunch of books, and they're all very thick.
Yeah.
I did like the book. I did like the book, and I thought the movie was it was a faithful enough adaptation of that. A couple things, in the translation that I didn't really like, but we'll get into that. So, yeah, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. Really, we've got 3 different stories being told here. We've got Danny Torrance's story. We've got the story of the True Knots and Abra's story. We go through 3 different time periods, right? So 1980, 2011, 2019. So we start out the whole movie with the True Knot. We meet the True Knot, this band of like psychic super being villains led by Rose the Hat. Rebecca Ferguson, everybody, like, what a performance here. Immediately we see why they're the baddies. Anybody that's going to go after a little kid, especially this little girl from Haunting of Hill House,
Right?
Was that her?
One.
It was, yeah. Mike Flanagan. He's going to reuse them actors.
He has so many of the same ones. And even the one that plays Wendy, I mean, it's kind of like, who's that from this one all throughout?
It's really fun to watch. And so the Rose lures this little girl. She's on like a vacation with her family, like, in this RV, and Rose lures her into like the woods, and we see the True Knot do what they do, but we cut off right before we see what they do,
Mm-hmm.
And, she's got, we find out a little bit later, she had the Shining, and this is what the group kind of does as they go in. They sense somebody who has the Shining. They go in and they have to like basically suck their life form from them. It's called the steam. They suck their steam up, and that's how this group sort of extends their own life. Their motto: eat well, stay young, live long. Remember that one. I don't know. What do we think about the True Knot?
Well, I loved. I think Rose is like one of my favorite villains. Like. In horror, not totally in like all of horror, but to come around in a wow, in terms of like a horror personality villain that has a personality, you know, that isn't just an entity like the Nun or Annabelle, where it's kind of like they just jump out or something. It was like, here's this character that has motivations and she's cold blooded. And I'm just like, and just the way she does it, where it's like, hi there. And I'm just like, she's so creepy, but also so cool. Like, you know, it's just, how is it both? I don't know, but I'm here for it, you know? So and it was such a, because you just knew what was going to happen to the little girl in that scene. Yeah. And I think she's so adorable. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like, you know, because usually the rule is like, you know, you don't really kill the kids, or you don't kill kids as much in horror. Although in recent horror, I think they've kind of, you know, been like, that's not
that rule's
gone
anymore. The rule's gone.
But back in the day, it was like, you know, you don't really kill the kid. You know, the kid's not going to die, at least not brutally. And this film, I mean, and just, yeah, it was sad.
It's 2 total, right? 2 kids died in this one.
Yeah, brutally too.
It's okay. It's okay. Hey, we're having a discussion. Go ahead.
I think they are the most boring fucking villains.
My gosh.
I also don't think this movie was underrated. I feel like all I saw was people being like, oh my God, this movie's so underrated. Like talking about this movie. And I was like, it's rated just fine. Like it is rated. It is rated. And like, I just feel like they feel like villains that could work in like Buffy the Vampire Slayer as like adversaries, not as like scary villains, because they're just like fucking hippies who eat children. And like, okay, I don't know. They like, I do think Rebecca Ferguson is giving a very good performance. All the acting, I don't think there's a role that's like poorly acted. Even like, I mean, Mike Flanagan is, as we've seen in Haunting of Hill House and stuff, he gets really good kids, like kid actors. Mm-hmm. I think all of the acting in this film is like really well done. That was my issue with the book, which I'll have you know I brought in case we needed to look something up.
Let's do it. Flip through them pages.
I just, the villains don't ever land for me, other than like they just feel like, I don't know, like supernatural serial killers, I guess. And they never feel scary. In the book, she felt a little scarier. I think because, and this might have been, you know how like sometimes you picture what the person looks like, even though that's maybe not. Like I always pictured her looking a little like her having like cracks, like you seeing the like, oh, she's actually been around for a really long time. This is a body that's been, you know, around for 100 years, where like maybe you see like she looks pretty up front, but like she turns her side and you're like, ugh, like you can just like see the whatever. And I think that's what I always pictured her looking as, not like a gorgeous hippie, which is what she looks like in this. And I hate her stupid fucking hat.
Shut up. Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Oh,
Wow.
Ian, this ain't Phantom of the Opera. Just Mike Flanagan. He did not like your movie. Please do not make anything else.
Please still come on my podcast.
Right? Please still come on the podcast. He's got Slave Fest 98, everybody. Rose the Hat. Come on, Ian. Rose the Hat is like one of these like modern horror villains that is going to be remembered. I feel like this is a movie that's going to pick up a few years down the line. It's like people are going to talk about this a lot more than they did.
I don't know what corners of Twitter you guys exist in, because I feel like all I saw was people saying, oh, no one's talking about, like one of those dumb things where people are like, why aren't people talking about this? And it's like, they fucking are. What are you talking about? Like all I saw was people saying like, no one's talking about this movie. It's so fantastic. It's so underrated. And it's like, but you're all talking about it. I don't know. That's like all I saw.
I didn't see enough of that. But what I did like about the True Knot, so there's like 4 True Knot members that are really we focus on here, right? It's Crow Daddy, Rose the Hat, Grandpa Flick, and Snakebite Andy. Yes, and so the other ones kind of fade out a little bit, but we get the vibe of what this like band of psychics is going for. You know, they may be cold-blooded to everybody else, and they are no doubt villains. They are awful people, but they look out for each other. They are, you know, they love each other, and they are only looking out for those in their own immediate circle. And I like that about them, because it gives them something other than, oh, we're just bad to the bone, you know, that's just us. We're just gonna be bad. Because they have a goal they're kind of working for. They just, you know, it's selfish, but that's what they're doing here. I don't know, they work so well. Maybe I need to go back and read it, because I didn't think she was all that scary in the book. And here, I see what the big deal is, I guess you're looking for like Phantom of the Opera, the half of the face kind of like missing, but like I thought they styled her pretty freaking great.
Well, she unhinges her jaw and stuff in the book, right? It's like this
She
whole
does,
kind
doesn't
of
she?
like, and I honestly, had I saw that, I think I would have disliked her a bit more because I think I had gotten, in terms of like what you were saying before, Zach, about getting that Stephen King, fatigue. I was so tired of the new Pennywise and how cartoonish I felt like he was. So it was, for me, seeing a character that wasn't, in my opinion, over the top and just kind of like, there's something under the surface that's so sinister and you don't have to see it thrown right at you immediately, but it's there. That chilled me a bit more than the overt like monster that you normally see. So
I think so. I think that calm, she's just calm all the time, and there are only a few moments where she kind of moves away from that and kind of loses it for a moment. And it's just that calm kind of like she just looks. Rebecca Ferguson is so good with just a look, So, but next we have Danny Torrance. So we're in 1980 still, and we've got I'm gonna forget the actors' names, but yeah, we've got recreation of Danny Torrance and Wendy Torrance. We see these flashback scenes of The Shining, and then we see them. They are now living outside. I mean, right after the events of the Overlook Hotel, and they're in Florida. Danny is still obviously really traumatized by everything that happened at the Overlook Hotel, and Wendy is too. And I wish we would have got a little bit more of like Wendy's trauma. In the book, I wish I would have got more of Wendy in the book, but there was more Wendy in the book than there was here. And I feel like they could have utilized this actress a little bit more because she was so good at playing Wendy Torrance.
I don't remember her being more in the book. I remember wanting more of her in the book as well.
Maybe she's just, and she's not in the book very much, but maybe she's just talked about more in the book because then we see like, when she died, like he just saw like flies around her face all the time. We didn't see that here. We didn't see much more of like the 2 or 3 scenes that she was here. So Danny, he's still seeing these ghosts. The ghosts of the Overlook Hotel have now like fixated on his Sean. And so they keep popping back up, and he's visited by Dick Halloran, who it's the ghost of Dick Halloran. Right in the book, it's just Dick Halloran, she calls him. But here it's the ghost of Dick Halloran, and he basically teaches Danny how to, lock these ghosts away, these demons away, which is, the bury method. You got trauma, you bury it, you lock it away, you don't really unpack it yet. So Danny hasn't really unpacked his trauma here.
I mean, I thought it was a poignant scene, just to kind of see, and it was kind of reflective of maybe what he continues to deal with, right? As we see it, just this idea of, like you said, the bury, kind of thing of not dealing necessarily with the trauma, but kind of just locking it away. And it can be debated whether or not that's a good or bad thing. But in terms of, ghosts haunting you and stuff, what else can you do? I mean, I'm going to have to bury this trauma because they're going to come at me. But of course, it's symbolic, too, because of just what he's dealt with. And in terms of Wendy, that was one of my issues with The Shining. I felt like they totally did. And I this is why I say it was a happy medium, because you got this sense of her being a strong mother, loving her child, but also maybe not knowing how to connect with him because of how do you deal with, what you dealt with at the Overlook and the fact that you lost your husband to insanity for all you know, and something else more sinister. So it would have been cool to get a bit more of that. But at the same time, this wasn't her story. I felt like in this particular case, what should have been more of her story should have been The Shining, but Kubrick was sexist. So he just basically relegated her to a screaming victim most of the time. So that The Shining should have been her moment to tell for Wendy's story. So unfortunately, we didn't get that then, but I felt like Flanagan kind of did a subtle kind of strength that she had in continuing to go on with her son even afterwards. So
yeah, no, I do.
You agree with that?
I would also amend that to be Stephen King isn't good at writing women either. I don't think Stephen King.
Well, she was stronger. He did her a little bit stronger in The Shining.
She just, I felt like in the book, she just has more time on the page, but I don't know that she's, but I mean, yeah, I don't think Wendy gets a lot of justice. And I think he does a good job of, like you said, she like is able to move on because I mean, some people wouldn't have been able to move on from that, understandably, right? Like, oh, a bunch of fucking ghosts, haunted your whole family and then your husband tried to kill you. Yeah, maybe you don't move on from that. But I do, yeah, I think in this, he does a good job of like, and I felt that actress was really good.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I think this goes back to this being a really good sequel to both. Or right, she's still channeling Shelley Duvall, but she's not like doing Shelley Duvall drag. She's like doing her own thing. But like still like she's costumed like her and stuff like that. That's a thing I think this movie did well with showing us characters we had already seen in The Shining, being like, look, this is them. They're still trying to dress the same, but we're not trying to just do straight up impersonations of them.
Yeah, I don't know Alex Esso though. Like as Wendy, I love finding characters after trauma. When in the slasher film, what happens to the characters after? In the ghost story, what happens to the character after? And Ian, I know you are on the same page with that. And I just loved it would have been a nothing movie. It would have been like an Ari Aster film or something. But I would have loved to just see a whole movie of just Wendy and Danny in Florida for a year or something like that, and just watching them kind of go through this. Because really, exactly like y'all said, how do you get over something like this? What do you say to a therapist? I mean, even back then, like therapy wasn't that big of a thing, but even if you got to a therapist, what do you say to a therapist about your experience at the Overlook Hotel?
Right.
And I just thought I loved this little flashback scene. I understood that it's a pretty long movie, so they had to just kind of go along, move along. But I thought the actors they cast to, replay these people were pretty
this
good.
Part is my favorite part of the book, which annoyingly is the opening of the book. But I think I really like, because I am drawn to the after the trauma, I would have liked more of Wendy's just trying to give her son a normal life. She's trying to function. Because in the book, I actually reread the beginning. So I was like, I remember it being different. I love that it opened that we don't get Rose right away. We just get Danny going to the bathroom. That's and I thought that scene was that's shit I love, because that is after trauma. He still has the PTSD in the form of this woman in the fucking bathroom. And I think both the movie and the book both did those scenes so well. But in the book, we get a little bit more of, we have Wendy going into the bathroom to she's like, ooh, did I see something? And she looks and then there's nothing. And but she sees the smear of the lady's skin. And so she goes to pee in the sink too, because she's like, I don't want to pee in here. Understand. I would do to that too. And I liked that stuff. I really liked. And I wish the book and the movie both don't have that much of that. But I think that the way it's written in the book and the way it's done in the movie are very scary. When Danny first goes in, you're like, is there something behind that curtain? And I mean, maybe it's just me because I'm a fucking paranoid baby, but there's been times when I go in the shower and I'm to pee at 2 a.m. and I'm like, let me open these shower curtains just in case. So I think shit like that is really well done. And Mike Flanagan is, of course, very good at doing scenes and scenes like that too, that are a little bit of a slow burn to a spooky, holy shit scene.
Very much.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
I mean, she's the scariest ghost too, in my opinion. She was just the most creepiest one out of everyone there in terms of the Overlook. So,
and you think of a little boy too, his first, maybe experiencing somebody nude is this old crazy looking woman,
wants to choke him to death.
That's gonna inflict a little bit of trauma,
off.
just a little bit. But then we kind of fast forward to 2011 now. Danny, like we said, what else do you do but kind of box it away, like Dick Halloran said. And so he did that. He put the Band-Aid on the problem of the ghost, but he's still carrying around trauma because it manifests itself in addiction, right? And I think Stephen King, he's got a lot of addiction storylines in his work. And Danny, is an alcoholic. He's using drugs. When we first see him, in this, he's with. Is it the scene with the woman and the baby? I think so, right? He wakes up in the woman's house, and she's
Yeah.
like thrown up. I couldn't tell, like, and I was trying to watch it. I couldn't tell if he knew that she was dead at that moment. He does, right? Or he thinks she just like passed out and like threw up on herself.
Oh, when he gets up to try to take the money from her and stuff. I don't think he thinks she's dead at that moment.
Okay.
I don't think he gets that sense.
Yeah, and he sees he sees she's got a baby, and Dick Halloran comes, and he's trying to be the voice of reason. So we got Dick Halloran 3 times in this movie, I mean, Danny's he's just a broken person, and so he's not making the best decisions, and he leaves the screaming baby and the woman, and just not his problem. So he like gets up, he moves to New Hampshire, meets Billy, and commits to sobriety at some point. We also in 2011 have Abra. We're introduced to Abra in 2011. This is another girl who is shining, and she's got these really powerful telepathic abilities. So we've got Abra, and she's like at her birthday party, and her parents, she's showing her ability. She's got like floating silverware and all that, and the parents very concerned. And this is actually the first time that she links with Danny and catches the attention of Rose, because Rose the Hat is also, with her band of sidekicks, and they've pulled in another girl, a 15-year-old girl, Rattlesnake Andy, who lures men, lures pedophiles into situations, and she like, okay, so she's in the movie theater, right? And this guy comes to meet what he thought was a young girl, and her telepathic abilities that she can like control people with her mind, I guess. And so she carves a snake bite into his cheek. Tells him that every time he looks in the mirror, he's going to say, "I like little girls." And Rose the Hat and Crow Daddy see this, and so they want to pull her in, and so they pulled her into their band of sidekicks.
I enjoyed that aspect of getting. I mean, it kind of plays into that. Some characters being somewhat gray, right? Whereas like she has a kind of a noble thing that she's doing, although we see later on that it just, she kind of gets corrupted. But when it first starts, her whole thing is using this. She gets a little money, but she's also kind of doing her due diligence in marking, kind of in the form of, that new movie, that Oscar movie that everyone's talking about, Promising Young Woman, where it's like marking the guy and things like that. So I thought that was important to have there, especially for that character, especially when you see the kind of the trajectory of where she ends up eventually. And Rose and her guy, like, trying to size that situation up. So yeah, I thought, it's a lot of exposition, right? We have to kind of get to know all these characters to kind of get the significance when they come. I thought the young Abra was adorable.
She was, right?
She was so adorable. And I was like, yes, oh my gosh. For me, I just love seeing young Black girls with powers on shows. Yeah. I'm like, yes, give us all the supernatural powers. So I love that aspect. And I just, this idea of her powers and having it so young, and that where that power was coming from, and to be so powerful from the very beginning, from such a young age. She's already kind of formidable. And I thought that was a great thing to see, but also see the fear in her parents' eyes, right? Kind of like what is happening here necessarily. And and I know when Danny was young, he was kind of not considered a big deal, but his shining was pretty like significant in the, it was kind of like a significant thing. He was kind of very powerful, even more than I think Dick at the time. So it's kind of like you're seeing this next generation. And it's interesting because in looking at the differences of, certain plot lines from, as Ian would probably know, like that don't make it into the book. It still don't make it into the film because it's for whatever reasons. It's interesting to see that connection of Abra and Danny's storylines, because in the book, she's actually like blood to him. But in this one, they kind of don't do that aspect of it, but she's still very much connected to him.
Yeah. So I guess like my issue is I really like that stuff, but for me, it's like, oh, are they training to be X-Men? Or they I'm not sure like where that relates to like the Shining. This didn't quite feel like horror to me. It felt more like supernatural, like like I said, I felt like it could have fit in Buffy, which I guess like is technically considered horror, but like it's different than like what The Shining would be for me, I guess, is like my big issue. But I do like that stuff. And, you know, Ewan McGregor is a good actor. The actress who plays Ebra is a good actor. Yeah, I don't know. I do like the stuff with the kids. Because I mean, I agree. It's like very nice to see like this small, cute black girl who has like fucking awesome superpowers.
Yeah, and she's just so joyful about it too. About, you know, she's not depressed about the fact that she has this power. Just she's like, yeah, this is great.
Yeah, and that is like,
and I'm
even
like, oh, I love it, joy.
Even like later on when she's at school, like she's still not like, you know, depressed about her powers and stuff like that. She's kind of just like realized that this is me, I guess. And like, you know, when she's reading other people's minds later, and the girl says, that freak is staring at me, like she doesn't, you know, go to the bathroom and have a little sob. She's just like, oh, let me get back to my research real quick. Like she seems well adjusted, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and I do enjoy that. I enjoy that kind of aspect with it. And then she I'm glad she's not related to him in this one, because I didn't really like her being. I feel like that was kind of an out of nowhere something, that she was related to him in the book, but she still calls him Uncle Dan. I mean, she like links with him telepathically, and you know, they keep that up for the next like 8 years. And so yeah, present day, Abra and Danny they've been communicating, you know, for years now telepathically. And we've got the new actress, Kylie Curran. Hope I'm saying her last name right. Danny's been sober for like 8 years, so that's great. You know, he committed to sobriety and he's stuck with it. And he's now, like, his job now is he's kind of taken on his shining and used it for good. So he's kind of fallen into the role of this Grim Reaper in essence. But he's like helping those on the brink of death to just cross over peacefully, you know. And I really love this, and we see it like 3 times in this movie, is people really afraid of death. Death is something that I love explored, and like what people are thinking of death, and like the afterlife, and like, you know, we see these people. Even Grandpa Flick says later that he's scared to die, you know, because we don't know what's after that. And so him coming into this role and using his shining to just like tell people, hey, you're good, you're gonna be good. And they believe him, you know, he's got that calming and trusting nature about him.
Yeah, it's once again him using his power. Like, I mean, I get the idea of it seems like supernatural kind of X-Men type thing, but I just felt like, you know, it was cool because, I mean, horror, to me, it does explore things that aren't always like jumping out at us, but sometimes those dark thoughts that kind of can fester. And I think with this case, you have this idea where you have these characters who, you know, come into their lives and things, who are afraid of death, right? Which is such a subtle thing to be afraid of in a horror movie of all things, where it's like people are dying left and right and slashers and stuff. You just kind of move on. Oh my God, Susie, no.
Especially if you're a ghoul that's eating
yeah, people. And it's like you're moving on. But then you get to the idea of why these people are like these cosmic type vampires, what they're trying to stave off after years and things like that. And it's like, I mean, it's just something that we all kind of, in our own way, your imagination can play with you, where you wonder, like, is the things Danny showing them truthful, or is he just like, you know, making it easy for them as they pass on? Does he truly believe there's something beyond? I mean, clearly there has to be in a way, because Dick is able to keep you know, visiting him and things. He must be coming from somewhere. He's not just, you know, in the ether. So there's some in some instances of that, I actually did find comfort, because I'm like, well, that's nice that the movie's kind of taking this stance that there's somewhere beyond. I'm not going to call it a wholesome flick, but it's like, you know, it's taking this stance of, yes, there is the beyond and something, but there's still things, the fear of the death itself, you know, that uncertainty. And I think that does play into the physical uncertainty that happens in horror, which is like, what's that in the darkness that I can't see? And it's like, here's death, which is like, I can't see it. I don't know what's here. And I thought like them playing on that in various ways, and it happens throughout the movie, but them kind of playing on that. And then you have this guy who's down on his luck. He has so much trauma, yet he has this time to kind of come out of himself to help these other people. And he kind of found in the most subtle way, you know, as this orderly, as this nurse, to help people in such a profound way. And I think that's the key when it comes to this for me, is that it's so it's never overt, the things that happen here. And I can see how someone can feel like, is anything happening? You know, but it's like, there's actually, and I hate to be that, because I'm usually not that person. Like, if you give me an Ari Aster movie, I hate him. Not him, but I hate his film. I don't know him. I can't hate him. But I can't stand this man's movies. And
we will agree about Midsummer then.
Yeah. And I cannot stand this, because I'm always being told there's so much, there's not just this. I'm like, no, it's as deep as a puddle, my friend. Like, his movies is deep as a puddle. But with Dr. Sleep, I'm like, no. I become that person. Like, no. There's so much going on. You just gotta roll with it. There's so much happening. Like, that's how I am about Dr. Sleep. So I kind of switch sides about it.
And
Great. So when we eventually talk about Midsummer, we'll have you on and then someone to team with Zach, because Zach does.
Okay.
And that's not true, Ian. We have said this like 3 times.
You like it.
Appreciate Midsummer. I would not watch it again. It is something that if you watch it the first time, you're either going to love it or, hate it, and you just don't need to see it again. But I mean, and that's the kind of, I'm just going based off of what I've heard less. But that's just kind of the thing about, like, many different perspectives coming into horror, right? Is like, where do you see a puddle and where do you see, an
ocean,
like an ocean? Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, Ian, if you were speaking about, like, where you kind of see the nothing here.
I mean, I was saying to Chancey,
yeah,
I still do think this is well made. I'm not trying to say it's not well made. I think Mike Flanagan, I actually would love to revisit. I haven't seen Hush, or even like the Ouija movie he did was like a sequel. And that first one just looked like okay, like teens are going out, they're doing a spooky thing, and then they get murdered, right? That's what that movie looked like.
It was real stupid.
But like, I would be interested in seeing that sequel since he did it, right? Because I mean, I would imagine even if it's something as basic as like, ooh, teens played a spooky game and now they're being murdered, he would bring like a next level at least to it, or like the set pieces would look awesome. So I would be interested in seeing his early stuff. I haven't seen Hush either. That was always a movie I meant to revisit.
Hush is really great.
I
really do enjoy it. I really do. I just saw it recently myself, just some months ago, because people kept telling me this is one of the scariest movies. And I'm like, that's not usually the case for me when people tell me that. But I did think this was really good. I did think Hush was really good.
Yeah, because I remember when it came out, I want to say, like, was that like no, it wasn't Netflix, because they didn't do that back then.
It is on Netflix, but I think it came out in theaters though.
But I remember, like, when I think it might have been pushed to Netflix, and that's when a bunch of friends saw it and they were like, oh my god, you have to see this. And I was like, cool, I'm definitely gonna watch that, and then just didn't. Like, there wasn't a reason why like I wanted to. But I'd be curious as like to how, looking at his like recent work as opposed to like his early work, like the difference, just because he always seems like on track.
Yeah, and he has a certain style. I think, and this goes back to Dr. Sleep, that I think he does that, which is why I, even in these scenes that we were just talking about, where he's so good at playing on the human condition in a way, and not to sound all jargony, but like the idea of what it means to be a human, to have emotions, to have trauma, to have issues, between interpersonal issues that can overflow into something bigger. And he does it in such a mature way. And I feel like, some filmmakers, they want to question, like, kind of explore the idea of human existence and what it means, but I don't think they have formulated their own ideas enough. And you can tell with Flanagan that he does have, I feel like even in Dr. Sleep, he's made his decision on what he thinks about life. Yeah. You can see that through the choices his characters make, the things that happen. You can tell that, as opposed to, say, Ari Aster, which is one of my main issues with him, is that he has not decided what he truly believes. And you can tell that when it fluctuates within the themes of his movies, in my opinion, particularly in Midsummer. But it's like, and so he leans more on traumas of like mental health and things like that, to kind of, this is gritty, this is a thing. But then you have Mike Flanagan with something like alcoholism, which was a big thing in The Shining with and Stephen King's The Shining, was the alcoholism and the issue of how, because it was personal to Stephen King, right? Because he had dealt with alcoholism and all the coke he did in the 80s and things like that. And like, trying to deal with that with, his, and how that affected his family. And I think Flanagan brought that back in with this. Like when you see Danny's speech after he's been sober for so long, that's such a touching speech, but it's also powerful because you know what happened to his dad. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's something that's kind of haunting in the sense of like human emotions that are haunting, I guess. But I know when my boyfriend, he actually refuses to watch any more Mike Flanagan stuff with me.
He's tired of it.
Because he cries at the end of every one. Because Mike Flanagan will make you cry.
Bly Manor.
Yes,
I was a wreck, and I just wanted a nice, like, haunted house, spooky movie show.
And that's exactly, he cried because he's a, you know, my boyfriend, he has feelings, and you know, so he was like tearing up, like he was just beside himself. He's like, I can't watch Flanagan no more. I'm not doing it. And I was just like, I'm so sorry.
I think you touched on something like really. That is very true. I think you touched on something really good though. It does like, and I love Ari Aster. I think he's very, very good. Hereditary is one of my top 5 favorite horror movies. But I think you hit on something very, very good in that, like, and we really shouldn't even be comparing them, but like Mike Flanagan does, like when you watch a Mike Flanagan project, you do get the sense that like he's telling you, hey, this is exactly what I believe. What you see is what you get. This is like, there's not too much like deeper, you know, you don't have to go digging too far. Whereas like Ari Aster, he's like, he seems like he's a director that if somebody comes up with a theory there, he's like, well, you just have to figure it out or something like that. I don't know.
I've read his interviews and I just roll my eyes. He's like, maybe. Did you get that? I'm like, just answer the question. What did you storyboard?
That does frustrate me. Frustrates me to hell. I'm still a big Ari Aster fan, but yes,
that's some David Lynch bullshit. But it's like, no, but you wrote it. You know what you're doing.
You know what you did.
Just tell us. But yeah, okay. So in 2019, to get back on track, the True Knot have been, you know, they've been having a rough go of it. They're not finding as many psychic targets out there as there used to be. Steam is running low. They're really, you know, really struggling to just get somebody on that radar. This is where we get little Jacob Tremblay, right? Yeah. They find one. Little Jacob Tremblay is like a hometown star, little baseball player. And this, I have to say, this scene was like truly horrifying. We're going to do a whole segment about this scene because this was, the opening was bad. Like, you know, you don't want to see, you know, it's like implied what's going to happen to the little girl, but we see it here. And you don't even see all that much. But like Jacob's acting combined with like the implied visuals and all of that, it's just brutal. And it was really hard. I had to fast forward it the second time because I couldn't watch it again.
I also fast forwarded through that part.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's definitely a lot. You almost don't think that they're going to show it, but I think I got the choice of it. Because, you know, like what we were saying earlier about how if you didn't know, like since he wasn't doing the whole unhinged jaw and huge teeth that are in the book or whatever, how else do you show how evil these people are? How else do you let people know these are dangerous people?
Yeah.
And it's not just when they suck up steam out of a cup or whatever.
Right.
So you have to show just how low it gets. So I think the scene was necessary. I'm just glad it wasn't like a repeated kind of thing where it kind of happened to, like, I didn't want to see 3 or 4 kids meet that in. Right. And I really like that kid actor too. So I was just like, no, I don't want to see this happen to him.
He's like so precious.
He went through everything in Room just to end up here. It's just
I was like, what? You know, and it's like, okay. But no, I understood it. But it is a lot. I think the second time I watched, or the third time, because I've seen it multiple times, but the third time, I look away. I don't fast forward, but I do look away.
Yeah. It was definitely necessary because it's just, how else do you paint picture of baddies, you know, instead of being like cool, like supervillains, like into real evil people, like evil to their core. This is Rose the Hat. She only cares about those in her circle. And this kid is not, like, he even says, you know, are you going to hurt me? And she says yes. And it's just like your blood runs cold, you know, chills, everything. And they really drag this scene out, right? And because then we go into Abra feels all of this. She connects and she sees everything and she feels it all. And she's just like, tears her up.
And the book, I mean, you might remember Chauncey better than I do. I remember it being pretty brutal in the book as well.
Mm-hmm. I hear, like, from my understanding, it was more brutal in the film itself, and it's longer in the director's cut, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It drags out a little longer.
Yeah.
No, I don't know why.
That might have been what I just saw then. That might have been the version I just saw. Because it did seem to drag out a lot more than I remembered it in the theater. So that could have been what I watched. But, like, you know, it really does, like, mess her up a little bit that night. But then, like, the next day, you know, we're setting up for the Abra detective show here. She's all on it. She didn't need Uncle Danny. She didn't need anybody else to figure out, like, where this kid is, who this kid is, you know, all of that. And she
just needs adults to believe her.
She just needs an adult to drive the car because she don't got a license yet. You know, this is. And she didn't have permission to go, so she contacts Uncle Dan, and he doesn't really want anything to do with it. She tells him that, like, hey, I linked with her. You know, I saw everything, and she saw me, kind of. And he's like warning her, like, hey, kid, like, settle down a little bit. And she doesn't, and she ends up convincing him to go out and find that little boy's body. But, you know, now we're all kind of intertwined because Rose now knows that she is out there. She knows that she came from the East Coast. She knows that she is like a whale of steam. You know, this is what the group has set their sights on now. And, you know, we see after a scene like this, the stakes are high now.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I love the fact that you have it so it's almost like Rose initially, right, is just sensing this power. Like, there's this power and we need to suck it out. And it's like Abra's like, I'm taking you down. You know what I mean? From like jump. She's like, I've got to do. And I think that also plays into why that scene with the young boy was so important, because we had to feel it so we could understand her conviction, right? Yeah. We could understand why she was willing to put herself in danger, to then be so obsessed with taking down this group of of psychic vampires or whatnot, right? So I thought that was, I think it showed the strength of her character too, which was kind of the reverse, where it's like, yes, Danny has his story going on, and it could have been a thing where they kind of play it where Danny just is basically trying to save the young girl, because the vampires just want the young girl. So it's really about his story. But then you see that it's really Abra is also just such a key player. She has her own agency in all of this. She gets things moving, and not just because she's in danger, because there are times when it's like, well, maybe Rose is the one that needs to be worried, right? So it's more so it's like, it's because there's a battle of dark and light forces going on. And it's kind of epic, but it's, once again, it's subtle, but it's epic. Because it's like, Abra's like, I'm taking you down. You're trying to kill, like, what these people that are her people, right? The Shining, those people. And then, of course, Rose the Hat is like, well, I'm trying to keep my people alive. So you have these two that kind of are going at it, who can't exist. You know, one needs the other, and the other one needs to vanquish the other in order to survive. So, it definitely sets it up.
And Abra's not, like you said, Abra's not willing to just let it go and, like, listen to Uncle Danny and just kind of, like, sit back and stay pretty, you know? She goes after Rose the Hat in the grocery store is, like, one of my favorite scenes of this. It's just so cool, of that first moment where they finally are just, like, kind of face to face, and then she just sends her back, like, 2-3 times, and it's just... Abra's freaking cool. Abra's like, she's the cool chick in this movie.
She really is. She's like badass. I'm just like, what? Like, I wasn't expecting it. It really threw me. I was like, wow, they are making her like formidable against this villain that we know is so monstrous. And they're letting her not be like that annoying, you know, young kid trope where it's like, I can do so much, but I really can't. And then I just get in trouble. But it's like, she actually can. She's not just, you know,
she doesn't feel just precocious.
Yeah. She's doing because she knows that she can actually win against her if she tried. I
also like how much Rose, like, gets her ass kicked a lot.
She does. She does.
It's not that scene, right? It's the other scene where she like fucking smushes her hand and like,
it's like right after this. It's right after this. Yeah, it's right after this because they're both trying to, like, they are now like in a battle to get through each other's minds first, And so Abra like sets up this whole plan for Rose to, because Rose is going to come find her. Rose sits up on the little RV, gets her little meditation going. I love the visuals of them like traveling around and Rose lifting up and just flying through. Very Kiki's Delivery Service, like just flying through the air and landing, like going into her bedroom. And, it's a whole setup. And she's got Abra's little attack uniform. She's got the wig on and the no eyes.
Like,
I don't know where that came from, but
I'm like, all right, she's ready.
Get the drama. And crushes like fucking Rose's hand, like pretty brutally, and just goes through her mind and gets through enough of it before Rose has to like book it out of there and just throw herself back into her.
And I love the way that looks. That looks when she's like spinning around, flying through the sky back to her body. It's like real cool.
And when she hits herself and like flies off the RV, it's just whoosh. She didn't even get a moment to breathe before like Grandpa Flick is like, what do they call it? Cycling out. He's like cycling out. And it's another one of those moments where, he's scared of dying because he does, he's lived for all this time seeing empires rise and fall like Rose says, but he is totally, brought to his knees in fear of death. Just like everybody seems to be.
And I mean, this was a critique of the book I had as well. We spend a little too much time mourning these villains when I'm like, okay, but I don't care. Like, I get that they care, but I don't care. These are people that eat children. Like, I just don't care. And I don't know what, like, for me, I feel that, like, for what is how I feel about these scenes, because we already have the notion of like, oh, they're like a tight knit group of family who like, eat children. And sure. And I get that, but I don't know why we spend so much time watching them mourn. Because if we're trying to humanize them, that's not going to work. And I already know that they're close. So I felt like that stuff just like didn't quite do it for me. I'm sure you both have a rebuttal, so I'd be curious to hear.
No, I agree with that. I think that it starts towards like the end, the like third act of the movie. It seems like they're doing too much with like developing character when we have already done that now. Like just like you said, like we already know that they're a tight group of people. Like they look out for their own and stuff like that. I mean, I liked Grandpa Flick's death because it introduces like how they kind of go out. But like all of these emotional beats and stuff like that, they've already been done. And just like in the movie we'll get there when the dad and Billy die, like it just felt like building stakes that were already there. That big ass stake was there when Jacob Tremblay died, and they didn't die in the book, did they? Billy and the dad. So it didn't make sense, but like we're still from here on out getting these moments of like setup still.
I saw the point of it, of the show, the stakes of what they were battling against, because there was less steam in the world, as Rose was saying. I do agree that, of course, I wasn't sad when the guy died, but it was also that weird kind of thing, because I do also like that actor who played the guy who's like, and he can play kind of a very sweet role at times and other things he's done. And so there were times where it was kind of like, even before that moment, he seemed like this sweet older dude. And then of course he eats the kid and stuff. And you're like, no, he's not a sweet older dude. But even in that moment when he's cycling out, you kind of sympathize in a way with, once again, that fear of death. And I from my understanding, like in the book, the thing is, it's not so much that there's a lack of steam, it's that they ate a bad kid. And that measles broke out.
That's right.
Yeah, it was like measles that were getting, so they were infected, right? So they figured they should kill Abra in order that her steam is being so strong that it would cure this this measles outbreak that they have. And so it's interesting that they did go this route where it was like lack of steam in the world. And I thought maybe because what's explained is that the lack of steam more so deals with there's less people showing their shine type thing. And I thought maybe that was some kind of comment. And once again, it's so deep. But like, I thought maybe this is a commentary on how, the world is so cruel that people's shine isn't coming through. Yes, Flanagan, I get it. Thank you so much for that, moment.
And Flanagan just says maybe. Go with your own interpretation.
Yes. And he's like, exactly. That's what I meant. That's why.
That sounds great. Sure.
Sure, it was that. So I honestly, I probably would have felt like it was more intense had it been the measles. So it's kind of interesting. That's probably like I have a few issues with what they switched. Although I love this movie, there's a few things I do have an issue with what they switched, and that's probably one of them too, that they didn't go with the measles thing, because I felt like that would have been more pressing to me.
It would have like stuck like a clock on the screen, right? It's almost like, because they would have had to race against time, because right now we know that like one, I don't know, thermos of steam will last them like 6 months. They have like a few in there, so that time crunch isn't really there because they have enough time to find somebody else. But like, yeah, if they had like, I don't know, the measles in there, what was your biggest disappointment with book to movie? Something that changed that you think?
I mean, one, I would have, in knowing that what they explained in the book, that Abra's family had a bit more of a role, like the grandmother that's only mentioned in passing. I thought that would have been cool to just kind of explore. But then it's like, well, Abra's already badass, so maybe I don't need to know all of her family. But then her dad dies in this, and he doesn't die in the book. Yeah. And I was like, oh. Now, when I found that, I was like, oh. I was like, why did they kill the father? Like, you didn't need to do that. I guess once again to show just how mean they are. But I'm like, okay, at this point you don't have to keep doing that. Like, we saw them eat a kid.
Like, we get it.
I don't need to have them stab her father to death to realize that. So that was one of them. And of course, Danny doesn't die in there. So and they chose to kill him in this in the Flanagan one. I'm on the fence about the fact that they killed Danny, though, because I understood why it happened.
It's funny because watching it this time, I was like, wait a minute, I thought he didn't die in the book.
Yeah, no, he doesn't die. He gets to go back and he ends up becoming, he goes back to his job and he keeps doing what he does. And I'm like, oh, which one did I like? Because I kind of like the fact that he made it so that he reunites with his mom. Because once again, that's Flanagan, right? It's like reuniting with your dead partners and family members. That's what he does best. It would have been nice had he had a happier ending in life, because he just had such a rough upbringing. But yeah.
Ian, what was your biggest disappointment in that?
Aside from the whole movie.
The whole movie, just the movie. The 2019
I think it would
release
be
of Dr. Sleep.
It would be what Chancey said about how, because like I did picture them being so to reference a reference that Zach will at least get in Adam Sass's book. He mentions in Surrender Your Sons. My friend Adam Sass wrote a YA book called Surrender Your Sons, and like the people that live, it's like about a conversion therapy camp. These like queer kids are sent to an island, and everyone on the island, especially the like one of the head teachers, her name is Miss Manners, and he says how like she's dressed very like prim and proper, but you can see that it's like her outfit hasn't been washed, her hair hasn't been washed. There's like, you can see the cracks in her outfit. Like she's wearing a white dress with like, I think cherries on it or lemons on it. And at the bottom though, it's like a little bit brown because it hasn't been washed. And so for me, I wish Rose didn't look so put together and so glamorous. Like I would have liked to see just like a little bit of like, oh, that's because she's been like eating children for 100 years and been alive for so long that like you can see a little bit of the cracks. That was Rose was my biggest disappointment, even though that actress is great. Like she is great. She does a good job. I just would have liked the character to be a little bit more, she's a little too like perfectly put together. I mean, until her like arm's broken, but like, you know what I mean? Like other than that, she's like very well put together. Yeah. Because I do understand them. Sure. They want to cut out the jaw mouth stuff because like you said, they already did that in It. We're already seeing that a lot. I'm cool with them cutting that out, but I just would have liked a little like if you look at this person, it's like, oh, they look well dressed, but then you get up close and you're like, there's something off. Like I wish we had that with Rose. But I will say, conversely, one of my like big things I was happy they did was that because it was a sequel to like both the movie and book, that the hotel was there, that they didn't
Yes.
blow it up. Because
Agree.
that scene in the book, I was like, they're running around a field. What is like
It's like a weird pavilion, like campsite
Right?
that they built on the Overlook Hotel. First off, it already takes way too damn long to get out there anyway. Nobody is driving out there to go sleep on a pavilion. It's just not happening.
Right.
I feel like sometimes I like a lot of the adaptations a bit better because they streamline what I think is what is such a great story that I get to cut out a lot of those details that I'd rather not read about, like The Stand, where I love that story, but I can't. I got the book, I got the unabridged, and I'm just like, it's like Dos Capital, like, you know, like trying to read. I try to go open my capital, same thing, like Marx, you are over inflated, and so
going.
are you, Stephen King. Like, yeah.
Stephen King, I mean, he's one of those people that I like, same category as like Lady Gaga and David Lynch, where it's like, I like what you're doing here, but I just need you to have someone who like is gonna edit you more.
Good editor. Yes.
A strong editor who's like, no, don't do that. We're not.
Yeah,
doing
take that out. Take this whole chapter away.
Yeah, we don't need that.
I think Stephen King's kind of a cheesy writer too. Like, I find a lot of his endings very cheeseball. And I think this is one of them. So speeding along again, like Crow Daddy kills Abra's dad, takes Abra. Danny gets Abra back. This is a scene that could have just been like nixed, just get over it. And Danny takes Abra to the Overlook Hotel. It wakes up because Danny's there. Hello, Danny. And Rose is pissed, so she goes after them. So we have this whole ending that is very different than the movie than the book. And this feels like more of the ending to The Shining. The book, I guess maybe that's what they were doing, because Jack Torrance dies in this way, right? It's Jack Torrance's death that they're doing here. But I don't know. I like this one better than I don't know. I always like when they change Stephen King's endings, because I don't like them very much. I just think he's very cheesy.
He's not the best. I think that was the ongoing joke, and he even started to accept it, where it's like people are like, yeah, hated the ending though. Like, that's his thing. Like, he knew he didn't know how to end a book back in the, and it's true, he didn't. He really, I mean, a lot of those, I actually do agree with that. A lot of those endings are just kind of like, what? Like, all this great stuff, and that's how you ended it? And even with this one, that's why I was saying that I feel like Flanagan's Dr. Sleep is such a happy medium, because it restored certain things that we did get deprived of in Kubrick's, which was the boiler scene. The boiler scene being so important, of you got to check the boiler. If you don't check the boiler, this can happen. And we get that moment where Jack dies that way. But right before that moment, he tells his son, don't forget that I love you. We didn't get that moment in Kubrick's, that heart moment was missing. And I feel with Flanagan, with kind of Danny making a full circle moment, facing the demons of the hotel, seeing his dad's ghost again, but now part of the hotel and stuff. I think it needed to happen. Like, it was good. I was glad that they didn't try to do a thing where it was like somewhere after the first movie, the hotel burned down and they just go back to what the book, did. Yeah. I'm glad that they kept that and then merged the two, because it definitely wouldn't have been as effective had they been running around an RV park. So I really like that they kept that. I really like that everything just came. It was such a full circle moment. Yeah. It was just like, wow, this is how this story ends.
So then a question, because we've got two different, for both of y'all, because we've got two different opinions here. And you love The Shining. Chauncey, you're not a fan of The Shining. So Jack Torrance.
I actually like the ABC version. Can I just say, because he didn't say he didn't like the ABC version. I remember, because I was over in Jersey at the time, ABC 7. I watched that whole Shining miniseries, and I liked it either. No. I liked it because it was closer to the book, and I was like, yes, I see what you were doing, King.
No, those kids, those kids that just have a punchable face. It's just that little kid in that miniseries. It's just that's it. But this kind of is Jack Torrance of The Shining at the end of this movie, rather than like Jack Torrance coming out and helping Danny to like take down the Rose the Hat. Like, what did you think about that then? What did you think about them using the Jack Torrance from Kubrick's Shining instead of Stephen King's?
Well, I understood it, it was kind of like I mean, it's kind of that weird thing where it's like, okay, I didn't like Kubrick Shining, but I do know that's most people's understanding of that story. And Jack Nicholson, total miscast of Jack Torrance.
No.
Oh yeah, he was a miscast. No one's gonna believe this guy's gonna descend into madness. You already think he's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. He came in at the end of his arc in that movie where he was supposed to get there. He was already arrived. So it was one of the things, but that's who we know, right? Here, that's who we know. So I understood that they needed to have that one in this one too. I don't think it would have resonated with as many people had they not, unfortunately.
Fair. I mean, I mean, for the most part agree in your answer on the question of like, that's what people know. It just, even if they didn't have it at the hotel, but they wanted to show Jack, I feel like they would have gone for that because that's just like, we're on the screen. That's the version they know. I will say, I think the Jack was a little weaker than the Wendy. I think Wendy that actor was a little better. This actor who did Jack felt like it was Jack Nicholson drag more so than Wendy feeling like doing her own version. And at first, I remember when I saw it in the theater, I turned to the guy I was with and I was like, wait, I thought it was like, you know how they do that digital de-aging thing, they love to do. I like couldn't tell at first. I was like, wait, because like, you know, Mike Flanagan has everything, the way it's colored is different on his stuff. I couldn't tell. I was like, wait, is this a CGI Jack Nicholson? I can't quite tell. Like at first I was like, is it? But then it wasn't.
I was convinced they were going to do that though, because we heard of the Wendy actress and the Danny actor, but then like there was nothing about Jack Torrance. So I was like, this is going to be some Jack Nicholson bullshit. Love Jack Nicholson in it, but I don't like a CGI overlay. I'm just not a fan of those.
I don't mind it if it's like for a blip second. Like it was fine if it was like, oh, he just sees his dad in the hallway and that's a Jack Nicholson CGI. Okay. Sure, that's fine, but not like an actor like in Star Wars
or The Irishman. I actually like The Irishman, but
it's very long. It's a very long movie.
I watched it on Netflix and then I went to the theater to see it. That's how much I like that movie. But,
I can't commit to something that aggressively heterosexual that is also that long. I never watched.
I know, that's too much. I'm sorry. I've got my quota.
One thing this movie is really good at, I think, is fan service. You know, we know from the trailer that we're going back to the not in a shitty way. It's earned. Yeah. It's earned. It's laid in there. It progresses a story rather than, you know, something stupid, something that's just not going anywhere. We know we are leading up to this battleground at the Overlook Hotel. We get there. I am like weirdly particular about like number of doors on a hallway or like, you know, how the patterns look and stuff like that. Like I always look like when Full House came back to Fuller House, I was looking at that set and I was like counting each spindle and like just stupid stuff that doesn't need to be there. This did such a great job recreating all of these sets, all of these like little moments and all these callbacks. And when he goes into the room and sees that door that, you know, Jack Nicholson was hacking down, it's just like, it gives you chills all over. And all the fan service just works. And then it turns, you know, you get your walkthrough fan service. It's like, here's your 5 minutes. You Shining fans, walk through the Overlook, go see what it's about. And then Rose shows up and they have this big battle royale, you know. What do we think about their fight?
It worked. I mean, I thought it was, but it was funny because even with that, I will say I liked a little bit more of the confrontation that we talked about earlier when she had went into try to go on her mind and the whole thing with the different in her hand. I thought that was a little bit more like her getting her just dues for that, but I did like what eventually happens with her and the ghost kind of going at her. I thought it was fine, but I think by then at that moment I felt like it wasn't really about Rose anymore in a way, because now it kind of emerged to be more of Danny's story again, where it was like, I am back in my trauma. I am back having to deal with this place that was so, damaging for me. And so although I liked Rose's end, and I liked, they even brought in the whole thing with the maze and all that stuff, which I thought was cheesy in the original one. I wasn't impressed by the maze. And so, but they brought it back, and I was like, okay, they worked it in here where it works. And when she died, I was fine. But to me, what became scarier was when Danny was battling with the house as they tried to take him over. To me, that was when that was more of the intense final battle, kind of the final boss. Like in video games, like the final boss was actually the hotel itself. Rose was the boss right before that.
Yeah.
Rose was Goro. The hotel was Shang Tsung. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm still thinking Mortal Kombat because I watched that.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet. No, I completely agree with that. I think there's some things that don't translate all that well, and I think the boxes don't translate all that well. I don't like the boxes in this. Just like in the miniseries adaptation, the freaking hedge maze monsters were awful. They were so bad, and I'm so glad Kubrick just left them out because they don't work, and I don't think the boxes work here. I felt like we had a lot of like build up to Rose being this big bad, but then it was kind of a just quick battle, but then I get it because it is Danny's ultimate facing of his trauma.
Okay, but so my argument there would be, but the movie spent so much fucking time on Rose.
Yeah. That the payoff was not exactly like there for me either in that big fight. I would agree with you there.
Yeah, she didn't combust or anything. Or
I don't know. I wanted
something a little bit bigger.
Listen,
I don't know.
Chauncey, Zach just said he agreed with me. That doesn't happen very often.
That happens
But you
every
wanna
episode.
savor it. I know. Okay, that's fine.
There's a moment in every episode that we do where I stop, I get the mic close, and I go, "Ian, you were right." Every episode we do. So.
I totally, I do actually, I agree that it wasn't the most climatic part because I feel like they were saving that for the house though.
Yeah.
But I get you that it was like, why spend so much time if she wasn't even the main course, if she wasn't the big battle there?
Yeah. And then, the hotel overtakes Danny and he turns into his father. He's running around with the axe chasing Abra. One thing I hate in a movie is the power of love overcomes all. Just look at me. You know who I am. I'm Abra. I do think it works really well here because it is him trying to overcome something that had burdened him for so long. Because we already have the first movie that kind of sets that up for us. Whereas in a lot of movies, it's just... it's me. Just fight it. It's me.
Like, that's not how things work.
I'm possessed by a hotel right now. This is not that easy.
This isn't me. Like, this is a hotel in my brain. So, like, but I did. It didn't bother me here. Again, I agree with you too, Zach. It didn't bother me as much. It does bother me in most other, like, in a fucking movie. If it's like, this person is possessed by a ghost, how do you think them loving you is going to make that ghost not murder you? And when it works, then it makes me even more mad. So I'm like, why the fuck did that work?
Yeah. And then
like, you fucking
y'all are a straight up nihilist. I mean, it's like I don't know. I like that sometimes.
No,
I don't know. I like it. Because to me, I think it's like you have something worth fighting for. Because isn't the whole idea when you're taken over that they get you in a weakened state. They get you when, you are just like ready to give up on everything. So if you appeal to the person, things like you have something to live for, you have something to come back to, that makes their spirit want to fight more. But once again, maybe that's just me interpreting the power of love. Because I'm hopeful when I watch my horror movies.
And when you explain it like that, yes, great. But I think a lot of movies, it goes into cheeseball territory, and it's just like cringy. Like we just covered. We just covered The Conjuring, and that happens at the end of The Conjuring. She's like, puts her hand on her forehead, and she's like, "This is your child. You're a mother. Think." And she's like, "Ah," and it just turns into some big just. It made a lot of sense here, so I'm all for it here. It's just, and then Abra leaves. Then he goes down into the boiler room, and the whole hotel explodes. But right before that, we see Wendy come back, and I just love it. I loved Wendy Torrance in this. Again, I want a whole Wendy Torrance movie. I just like that little peaceful moment. I didn't like that he died in this, though. I think he could have lived.
Yeah.
The hotel would have blown up anyway.
Yeah, and I agree with. I think that was once again bringing it back to what was supposed to happen in The Shining, and Flanagan kind of, in a way, that was fan service too, right? But for the book readers, it was like, y'all didn't get this in The Shining. Kubrick did you dirty when he didn't give you this. Let me give you this here. For those who thought that, and Stephen King loved Dr. Sleep, right? He didn't care for Kubrick's version. So there was also that kind of maybe making the creator kind of happy with it too, eventually, with his work that started it all. And I did like that Wendy was there. I like that they had that moment where it's like he didn't, when she, like, because it goes back to when he was saying when she was dying of cancer, where it was like he said he couldn't even look at her when she died, right, because of the flies. And here, that must have been so traumatizing for him as a young boy or a younger man. The last, vision of your mother, who you cared for is this. And so he finally gets to see her again in this, in a beautiful, subtle way of how he remembers her. And in a way, it was this really bittersweet ending for his journey. So I understood that. And only Flanagan can get me to like.
That's what I'm about to say. That was a Flanagan scene. He slows it down, slow-mo, the fire's going slow. Wendy just comes out of nowhere. Just puts a hand on
and
cheek
it just works. And she's like, it's okay now. And I was just like, yes, it's okay. Any other time I've watched stuff and something like that happens, I'm like, there's no reason why this character needed to die. I usually call it like emotional manipulation that, movies try to do to make you feel like it's more poignant than it is. It's like, well, we're not landing, so let's kill this guy, or something like that. And I just felt like this actually, I could accept what happened to him. And the other thing I will say that I feel like this movie does that, once again, we did not get, I felt like with Kubrick's, was the overt supernatural aspect of Danny becoming possessed by the house, by the hotel. With Kubrick, it was very much, it was kind of open to, well, did he go crazy, or did the place possess him? Because they didn't do the physical thing. They did the physical thing in Dr. Sleep, where you could tell when he was being possessed, his like things would happen to his face. It would be a change, and that was what was supposed to happen in The Shining. Kubrick gets rid of that, so it leaves it open interpretation on whether or not he was possessed. And I like the fact that it was like, yes, we know he's getting possessed. We know this hotel is straight up haunted. And I like that way better than the leave it open to interpretation of maybe he's just insane. Maybe the monster's inside of him. And I'm like, that's a cop out.
I like it. I enjoy it. I liked The Shining. We'll have to cover that one. Ian, what'd you think of the ending overall?
I didn't mind the ending.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, while I didn't love everything about the hotels, sometimes it felt, because it wasn't shitty fan service, but sometimes seeing all the ghosts again, and when they all pile up to like attack, it was like,
I didn't like that. I didn't like our favorite ghost characters coming back in that way. I think maybe if we would have seen them
when he's
placed
walking
around the hotel, it'd have been better. But like, I don't know.
But I was going to say, but even though I didn't love everything about the hotel stuff, I was glad we visited the hotel. I was glad we got that instead of the fucking campground. And I did tear up at the Wendy scene.
Yeah.
Like I was like a grump watching the theater, like, I don't think I like this. Oh wait, I'm crying. Like,
and then he leaves and he's still wiping a tear. That was an awful movie. Awful. But it's,
it be raining out here.
Much better.
No, actually, if you all must know, I saw that on a date, and it was like a third or fourth date. I went to kiss the guy and he gave me his cheek. That was how I ended that movie.
Oh no!
It's
No
because
wonder
you're sitting
you
there
have
like this.
negative
It's because they didn't like it.
You associated with a shitty date.
No, he hated it too.
He hated it too. Okay. Well, then both of y'all just hated
Well, I
the
didn't hate
date
it,
as
but
well.
he hated it.
Okay. It is a better ending than because in the book, and I went back to just make sure I reread part of the end of the book, but like Danny just sees his dad and they're like they give each other a see you later
Happy wave,
type of thing.
yeah.
It is so dumb, but you know, we got our fan service. We got a bunch of sidekicks in a battle for each other's minds. We've got 3 different time periods, and we've got this is the prequel for the Abra detective show that we will eventually get one day. I guarantee Stephen King's gonna write something with that.
Before she
I'd be
opens,
for it.
she opens Xavier's Institute for Gifted Youngsters.
No, this is Abra's story. But that was Dr. Sleep. I don't know. I think
I still love it.
Yeah, I love it. What was your favorite scene, Chauncey?
My favorite scene, probably the scene where Rose gets her butt handed to her with the cabinet file. It was just like I every time I think about that moment with her and she has to pull it out in the skin, I'm just like, oh man, like that's it right there. And so yeah, that's my favorite scene. That whole sequence.
Yeah. What about you, Ian?
Same, honestly, same. I mean, we both brought it up at the same time. Like I that's the scene I think of when I think of this movie because I think that's so well done, and I think it does a good job of playing with like what you're seeing in the mind with like the cabinets. And then it, like you said, it's fucking gross with her hand stuck in there. And I love the visual of her, like she's like falling back into her body, but flying into the air. Right. It's like, and I love the way that looks and like her hitting herself and falling off. I think that's really well done. I think that's like the best scene in the movie.
Because it almost takes like a moment for you to do something like that too, like lift herself up and fly gently, but she has to get out of there so fast that she just spirals out of there. And I would say, I think we're all going to agree. We're going to end this on an agreement. We all agree that's our favorite scene, followed closely for me by all of the 1980 Florida Danny and Wendy stuff because I love it. It hits me, it gets my heart. But good thing we agreed on this ending. This was our coverage of Dr. Sleep. Chauncey, where can everybody find you?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Miss Chancey KR. Forgot my name. Miss Chancey KR on Twitter. You can also find me on YouTube under Chancey K Robinson as well, Twisted CKR, where I upload pretty much a few days a week, various film and TV reviews.
What about you, Ian? What about Slayerfest and Bloody Judy? Go for it.
If you are looking for My Bloody Judy in podcast form, you can find us at Slayerfest 98, which you can find on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other corners of the internet where you get your podcasts. You can find us on social media at Slayerfest X98. And Zachary, where can they find the videos of My Bloody Judy?
Because we're all over the place. YouTube.com/AZB bonus features. The video format will be on AZB bonus features, and all podcast audio episodes will be over on Slayerfest 98's platform. So go check them out. Go check out Chauncey's channel. Go check her out on Twitter, everywhere. All right. We thank you so much, Chauncey, for coming on and covering Dr. Sleep with us. This was her pick, by the way. So great pick.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for watching, and have a great rest of your week.
Bye.